Welcome back to another episode of Cactus Quest. I am your host, Hunter, and in today's episode, I am in the greenhouse of Peter Wilkowiak, who's been growing cactus and succulents for the past 40 years. Some would say he's an expert, and I would certainly be one of those people. So today, what I thought we would do is get together and actually talk, rather than just show you a bunch of great plants, which we'll do that too. I wanted to talk about how to actually care for these plants, because I don't know anybody that grows big, beautiful specimens better than Peter. And so today we're gonna pick his brain. I've actually fielded some questions from people on Instagram, and we're gonna learn about how to really care for our collection. So let's get on into it. So just stage this up?
Yep.
You know, that's perfect actually, because one of the questions that we had was about staging.
Yeah, and one of my criteria for staging a plant is a broken pot.
So when it breaks?
Yeah, and if you go behind you, Hunter, you'll see a couple of plant adeniums have broken pots over here.
So when you're staging a plant, because you definitely, you've got some amazingly staged plants. What is your philosophy about staging? Are there certain rules that you stick to or things that you like to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's the shape of the pot goes with the shape of the plant. And also the texture and other features in the pot go well with the plant. And this plant tends to be a little off-centered a little bit. So this pot is not totally symmetrical as the Katoi pot.
And this is Euphorbia stellata?
No.
No?
No, this is Microcantha.
Microcantha?
Microcantha.
Interesting.
This is one you don't normally see. I will have some available later this year. I just planted up a whole seed flood I had of it.
And so it's got...
See, it has a beautiful caudex, and you can see it broke the pot. Wow. You can see how massive that caudex is.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's usually my criteria. Here's another one. Sitting here, see? That's what I like. Criteria for breaking, you know, if I walk down there, there's two more there that are broken pots.
So do you typically try to...
This is another one here. Look at the pot. It's like a little punching bag with the round bottom.
So it's ready.
Yeah, that one there is ready. I believe it's broken the pot.
So when you're putting something into a pot and you're gonna stage it with rocks, I know a lot of people are curious, where do you get your rocks, all that kind of stuff. You know, I've heard different things from different people, like there's rules. You don't want to...
There are some rules. I usually go to, a group of us go camping out in the desert. There's lots of BLM land where you can collect stuff. You're not supposed to collect and resell it, but you can collect for your own personal needs, and that's what I do. One
of the things that I have found is that you can actually find, in terms of top dressing, you can kind of find top dressing in anywhere. Like any dirt that you find, if you sift it down, you'll end up getting like small rocks.
Out there's lots of gold mines, and the tailings are this pink quartz. It's here. The Aloe has it too.
Oh yeah.
That I get is the tailings from the mines. It's a great material for staging. I like the quartz because it's heavier, so it doesn't tend to move around as much. It's heavier than the granite that I typically use.
So like with this Pachypodium here, which is nominal, you got a little hitchhiker. What's that Euphorbia there popping out?
That's from the ones behind you.
Okay. So
don't ask me which one.
So with this, what is this, petrified wood?
No, it's a type of quartz.
A type of quartz? Wow, okay. And then what the top dressing?
That's again the type of granite that's called Apache brown or something like that.
And is that something that you got from like a landscaping place? Or?
Yeah. Landscaping supply places are great places to get different colored granites and different colored gravels and textures.
And you may want to invest in a few different sized sifters. That way you can isolate.
And I also have that.
Yeah, so that's what I do a lot.
Yeah, that's what you found that you start doing that a lot. You start collecting rocks and top dressing because you need those to go with your plants. You can buy it at a lot of the shows, but there's only small bags. You have to buy a couple bags in order to do a large plant.
Right.
And I go through quite a bit of top dressing. I don't like the small, as you can see it washes out easy, but this blue goes well with this pot and the texture of it.
Gotcha.
But I have some more of it, so I'll have to
And so
this plant will probably be going to the inner city. This one and this.
are these both swazicum?
Yes, both swazicum. This is the original one. This is the 40-plus-year-old one.
Jeez.
And this other one here is the seedling from this one and the one outside.
That's incredible. So now top dressing, when you're putting it in like a staged, staging a plant into a ceramic pot, do you kind of stick to a certain amount of top dressing in terms of like you leave a certain amount of soil?
I like to leave a minimum. I like the minimum of 1/4 inch, but I like to go to 3/8 of an inch to half an inch of top dressing. The thicker it is, the better it makes. Top dressing forms has two important functions. Most important of is you hear a lot of talk about soil being fast draining.
Right.
The top dressing keeps your soil fast draining if it's clean when you put it on. If it's dirty, it screws things up. And the other thing is, of course, the looks.
Right.
But to me, the most important job that the top dressing does is it keeps it fast draining.
And how does it do that? What is it?
It breaks up the water flow instead of it being coming out of my spray head as a stream. I recommend this kind of water wand.
Yep.
And right now it's hot, so I'll hold like this and spray until I feel the water gets cool. This allows the water to cool off. So now I can feel
the water's coming out cooler.
So what's nice about these water wands is you can do it by thumb, and watering it is like that.
Right.
See, the top dressing causes the water to flow out and around into the soil.
Yeah.
And see, I judge it by how much time I need, and that would be about it for that plant. And you can see the water now starting to drain out the bottom.
Gotcha. And so we're right now just on the brink of summer.
Right. And I'm going to be watering today, so this is just when I won't have to water again later on today.
And have you found that when so the other thing too that I will say while we're on the topic is that I really like top dressing even in my like seedlings and stuff where it's just in a plastic pot. And I find that when you're watering and you have top dressing on there, then you end up not messing up the soil. You get less like pumice popping up and jumping all over the place.
And I can show you some examples of seed flats I just sown.
Yeah.
And it's all covered with the same granite.
Right. And
gravel.
this like for example, this is just your
just
DG
what I get out of my own
property.
yard.
Yeah.
So it's a decomposing granite, and I screen out all the fines, and I use the coarse as my top dressing.
Okay.
And it's a good cheap, for now, top dressing. As long as I have it, I'll probably have it for another year, and then I'll probably be forced to start buying top dressing. Well, it depends on the speed of the plant that grows.
Okay.
Time of year. If you're going to go to a small plant in a big pot, start at the beginning of the growing season, not at the end. We'll say no to repotting at the end of the growing season because you're most likely going to rot it. I never do that. At the beginning, with like adeniums, right now would be last month was the time. Now I'm just transplanting to the next size up. I'm not going to go to a really large pot.
So let's just say, for example, like somebody's has, because I think adeniums you could put into a bit of a larger pot and they'll like that.
Oh yeah.
But let's say
but at the wrong time of year, not if it's just before they go dormant or they're going dormant, bad.
Right. Now, like with it, let's say you have an Areocarpus, right? Yep. And it's coming out of a 4-inch pot and it's pretty much filled out that pot. It's ready to be repotted. You wouldn't then put that into a 12-inch pan.
I have.
You have?
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't be worried about the soil staying too wet around the plant for too long?
If I use a mix like my mix, it's fast draining and it dries fairly rapidly on its own without even the plant being in it. I feel totally comfortable, and I can show you some retusis and trigonias and things that I did that several years ago, and they look beautiful now.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because I spoke with a guy out in Tucson he does mostly like landscape cactus and stuff like that, but he'll take something out of a 3 1/4 inch and put it in like a tub. And
if you know what you're doing, you can get away with it.
Yeah.
But again, I know what I'm doing. I have the environment here where I can do that.
There's probably a lot of people that are not able to have a greenhouse. They might have like a small backyard, or they've got like a condo and they've got a little patio or a balcony at an apartment.
look at all your microenvironments that you have in your yard.
Right.
Put the plants against south-facing walls that like heat, things like that, that need the heat. And then there'll be parts of the yard that are be much more cooler and lower light. So you have to look at your yard and decide where, during the course of the year, where the hot spots are, where the cool spots are, and accordingly put plants in those areas that like that.
Yeah.
So in a small yard, you have a very controlled, small microenvironments so you're going to have specific plants that you can grow easily in that spot, but you try to grow somewhere else, I can't do it.
Right. Yeah, I recently moved, and we now have a front and backyard, and the backyard has a lot of trees in it, so it's not great. I got an area where I can have some plants, but there's a lot of shaded areas, so I ended up actually grounding a bunch of haworthias. So I've got all these haworthia truncatas in the ground. So they're like shaded in the hottest part of the day, and they get like a lot of like evening sun and like as the sun's setting and morning sun. And so it's like because it's like I'm looking at it, it's like, okay, I can't grow the Chihuahuan desert stuff here, but I could get away with a lot of other stuff like trichos. A lot of the columnar cactus would do really well there. A lot of the soft succulents.
So even here in the greenhouse, you'll see that all my Dicarii type euphorbias are under the shade of other plants.
Right.
Because they prefer being under the shade of other plants. So that's again going to their own needs. And you can see this one's probably getting too much sun. This one's better, but back there they get a little bit more shade.
And so you've essentially created like its own little shaded microclimate.
Yes. I take advantage of the microclimates that I have.
Yeah, I have a table where all of my mesems are, so my conophytums and lithops and stuff like that. And I have in front of that table, like sitting, on the south end, I've got a big Serraria namaquensis that's totally branched out. That gives them shade. It breaks it up throughout the day because I know that some of those don't want to get scorched. They don't want to be like burning.
And I have another example. I have Operculocaria hyphenoides.
Okay.
I have 3 of them over here on my table. And I found that certain cactus do not like to be in this light in this greenhouse. So I grow them in and around the 3 Operculocaria because there's a microclimate there that's a little bit shadier and cooler.
So while you may not have like a huge greenhouse and 3 Operculocarias to tuck your plants under, you more than likely have some kind of plants in your yard, and you can look at all the different factors. Maybe it's like your neighbor has a flagpole and that casts a shadow throughout certain parts of the day. All those little things factor into
For instance, this guy, I just moved here. See how it's yellow?
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I moved it here. It gets a little bit more shade because it was in where it got too much sun before.
Yeah, so the yellow is sun stress. That's not. So if somebody tries to sell you a variegated plant, by the way, that looks like that, just know that's not variegation.
Yeah, and this is sunburn from last year.
Okay.
That happened. So in the same spot, so I decided I'm going to keep it in the shade from now on.
So you have your soil mix, and you're obviously growing succulents from the old world, cactus from the new world. They all have different things, but you have them all in the same mix.
The only plant I really deal with differently, my larger deniums, which I have in the greenhouse, I use more pumice. I find that I need them to dry out in the wintertime, and I was having a problem with perlite. The quality of number 3 it was so fine, I was having problems, so I started using pumice, and I noticed great improvement. But I use number 4 perlite now because it's the largest granular. Pay a little bit more for it, but
Gotcha.
I would like it a lot more.
What is your soil mix normally?
It's 60% perlite, 20% compost, 20% decomposed granite soil.
Okay.
So I live here in San Diego, which is, look around the hills around here, it's all granite.
Right.
So decomposed granite, this is the perfect place for me to live.
Yeah.
And it uses, there are certain reasons why I use decomposed granite. It has a certain amount of stickiness that clay has without the bad consequences of using clay and dealing with clay.
Right. Okay.
The materials that hold the most nutrients and for your plants to use is compost, organic matter. Number 2 is clay. Number 3 is decomposed granite soil. Perlite holds some nutrients, but holds more nutrients than pumice does.
Gotcha.
So when you're using pumice, you'll have to use more fertilizer every time you water or more frequently. I use a very low level every time I water.
Okay.
And I acidify my water to about 6.
So you say a low level, you're specifically referring to fertilizing.
Yes, about 250 parts per million.
Okay, so if we were to put that into terms for like your average, just like, collector who's going to buy something at the local nursery, like
a teaspoon in a 5-gallon bucket of water.
So if what I kind of do is I've looked at like whatever it recommends
And divide it by around 10.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So like,
and your formulation is important too. Try to go to the lower nitrogen as you can. The one I use is a 10, 30, 20. So the first number is your nitrogen. That's your, and you can see everything looks nice and green. So you don't you increase your bug problems by adding nitrogen.
The plants grow a little bit more. They're softer.
Softer, more lush, and the bugs love it.
So lower nitrogen gives you a harder plant.
Correct.
There
more,
you go.
More natural, more like nature.
Yeah.
Which
So
is
it's
more,
hard,
most
you can
people-
kind of hard grow it in it through the nutrients rather than torturing it with.
You don't need to go to a larger pot all the time because you're always provided the nutrients. So it gives you that harder look.
So okay. So by oh, interesting. I've never really thought about it that way. So by keeping the nutrients coming to the plant through the watering, then it doesn't it can still be root bound and actually be successful.
Remember the bombax you saw in there?
For sure.
It's in the same pot as it was when I got it 12, 15 years ago.
Okay.
It's still in the same pot.
Yeah.
But because I keep the water pH correct, I haven't ruined it.
And you said your water pH is at,
Once I add vinegar to it, it's around 6.
and you're using white vinegar?
White vinegar.
Okay. I get asked a lot, what's the perfect soil mix? And it'll be somebody that lives, in Europe, or they'll live in Florida, or they'll live in like, Michigan or New York or wherever. I always really hesitate to give somebody some perfect soil recipe.
I've given mine out. I have a degree in horticulture,
Right.
with the emphasis in soil science. Because as part of the degree in horticulture, I had to take some soil science classes. Like, I found it fascinating. I learned so much, I took more.
Interesting.
So I have a lot of background in what's going on in the soil. And with the way I mix it, I found that was the key. It's just not just the ingredients, but how it's mixed before you use it makes 100% of the difference.
How so?
I wet it. I wet it more than most people would imagine. Mm-hmm. You'll probably be surprised because, well, I'll show you here shortly.
Yeah.
But it's pretty wet.
Right.
The reason why is because the DG and the compost combine and they stick to the pumice and perlite in your soil mix.
Right.
And rather than filling up the voids in between, so these are your soil with voids and things, it still holds as much water,
Right.
but it has better pockets of air, holds more air in it.
Okay.
And then when you talk about fast draining, the water flows through it quickly.
So, and air is definitely super important for the roots to be able to
correct.
grow healthy. And so that would mean that when you're putting something into a pot, like you should not be compacting the soil down.
Hell no. I do a little tap,
Right.
and that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe a little shake just to get it leveled.
Right.
And so I can put my top dressing in. I never water until I have top dressing on it.
Right.
And then I don't water for about a week after I transplant something.
And you're transplanting into wet soil.
Correct. And
Okay.
I water them ahead of time, usually the day before.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
so everything's hydrated. And that's important. That everything goes on. It's like they don't skip a beat.
So that it helps them to avoid any kind of like
Stress.
shock.
You don't want to water right away for a number of reasons. You just pull them out of the soil, you've got some root damage.
Mm-hmm.
Tips, root hairs, all sorts of things. I don't care how careful you are. And then you're putting them into soil and you're causing damage. So you don't want to water, because when you water, the water makes a film that then all the fungi and bacteria can travel through and find it points of damage and make an infection before they can heal it.
Right.
So you want the soil to be moist, because that provides humidity and encourages root growth versus being dry and arid. It causes desiccation and causes retraction.
Gotcha.
So you want to provide a moist soil mix that it goes into so it can go like immediately heal and starting new roots.
Right.
Start new growth, start getting established within a week. Within a few days of watering the first time, that everything you can start tugging on it. It's in.
Yeah, and the other advantage to working with wet soil is that decomposed granite, pumice, perlite especially, all those fine particles of that
All
are
mixed in.
hellacious for you to be breathing in.
Correct.
And when the soil's wet, then you're not getting all that dust floating around, which if you're repotting stuff indoors like in an apartment and that's your only spot, you must wet it first. I've seen a lot of people's collections, and then you see a lot of people's plants that they post on Instagram and stuff like that. And one of the things that I'll notice, there are certain plants, while we're talking about fertilizing and watering, you can certainly over fertilize, and I think we talked a little bit about too high of a nitrogen content will make the plants a little more attractive to bugs and less hard. But the other thing is, if you over fertilize, or if you were just, for example, if you bought tomato fertilizer, Miracle Grow tomato fertilizer, which is actually, you could use that for your cactus and succulents, but you have to use 1/10 of what it recommends. If you were to use the recommended dosage on that box, every watering, you will have really tall strombo cactus and really tall turbinacarpus and pancake stacked, ariocarpus. And those plants are not supposed to look like that. To each his own. If you just want the biggest possible thing, and you don't care if you turn a strombo cactus into a semi-columnar plant, by all means, do as thou wilt. But
and you just create a food fest for a banquet for your insects.
Well, I just absolutely am a huge fan and much more prefer plants that look as natural as possible and are a representation of what you would see if you were out in the desert, because that's what they have evolved to look like, and that's what I want them to look like, the ones that I'm growing. So look at that, damn near camouflaged. Second one, stand up, it's gone. Come back down. Oh, there it is. Stand up, it's gone. This is the systemic. And so with the systemic, you're using that. You put it into the water and you water with that.
No, you spray the plants.
Really?
And the time of day for your systemic is right at dusk. Systemic is absorbed into the plant, and for succulents, it has to be sprayed at dusk because that's when their pores open.
Right.
The other one I use, and this one works really good for scale, is the dormant spray, the dormant oil spray.
Okay.
And this one works great for scale.
So what are the?
It's used for fruit trees, for fungal problems. It'll work for downy mildew, powdery mildew.
And so is that pretty much it? Those are your two weapons of choice?
Dish soap. Yeah, that's it.
So what are you doing with the dish soap?
Dish soap acts as a surfactant.
Okay.
Insects breathe through little tracheal pores along their body. Mm-hmm. They don't breathe through their mouth. And the soap water gets into the little tracheal, and they get filled up with the soap water, and it kills them.
Interesting. And so, if you're gonna, let's say somebody's mixing up a Home Depot bucket of water to water their plants on their balcony or something, how much dish soap would you recommend putting in there?
Well, I would just a little spray bottle. And it's
so mix it, water it down so you can get it into a spray bottle and then just spray it on the plants?
Yeah, I take my sprayer and I'll put a squirt or two from this into the 2 gallons of water.
And would that be the same for the triazicide for the systemic?
This is 3 ounces per gallon, so I use 6 ounces per 2 gallons.
Okay.
For mix, and I use a couple squirts of the dish soap, and that acts as a surfactant, so that it's better absorbed through the plants.
And are you doing them together?
Yes. Sprayed last night, and you can see the dead aphids here.
Oh yeah.
They're all dying. They'll turn black.
Okay. And you sprayed with that's the triazicide?
Yeah.
Triazicide and dish soap?
And dish soap.
Interesting.
Yeah, and here's my sprayer. It's a battery operated one, it works really nice.
Oh, cool.
The oil spray, you have to use it all up. You cannot keep that already mixed.
Okay.
Terrazicide, this has been mixed for a couple weeks, not a problem.
Okay, gotcha.
But the oil spray, you must use it all. Otherwise, it turns into a herbicide. And I found the hard way
Wow.
that fact.
There's a question from Instagram. What was one of your biggest plant learning moments? You know, killed a plant, or you know, some moment that you had where you just you learned a lot.
I'll visually show you.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure that you, over what, 40 plus years now, have had many moments like that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, this plant survived it. Notice this dead area here.
Wow.
This is when I discovered that old oil spray is a herbicide. This just got sprayed. I was spraying some adenium, which I killed for mealybug, and this just got overspray because it was on the far side of the table, and it hit it right here.
Jeez.
And in this area you can see killed, so I went with it and bonsai'd it. This plant's a little over 20 years old. Probably looks older than that, but that's because it's me growing it.
And this is...
Pachycormylus discolor.
That's what I thought. God, the staging is fantastic.
Again, the key toy pot, you can see some of my rocks from my Tacopa.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you have a combination of plants both in the greenhouse and many that are outside as well. How do you pick and choose what's going to go where?
If they come from the same latitude as we're located here, pretty much like all South Africa, or from Baja, they can grow here. Now, Pachycormylus is Baja. Most of these euphorbias I have here are South African, so they experience that little bit of cold. They'll take a light freeze with no problem. They take the winter rainfall, which is the key, and no problems there, so that's the key. The ones in the greenhouse want to be dry in the wintertime. So they're kept dry by being in the greenhouse.
Right.
And some of them need to have a minimum temperature, so because the greenhouse does warm up during the day, yeah, it meets most of their minimal requirements. There's a few plants I can't grow unless I provide extra heat, and that would be like Pachypodium baronii, Adenium obesum. I have every Adenium species except for obesum, which is the most common one.
Interesting.
It's sort of funny, but that's the one that if I have a period during the winter where it doesn't warm up above 50 degrees, which does happen, you know, if I have storms happening and there's no sun, it will just maybe get 50, 55 in there. I can pretty much guarantee that if I had baronii or obesum in the greenhouse, that about 2 weeks later they would die.
And so like these fair rocks and Susannae, the euphorbias here, these guys stay out here year round.
Year round.
You're not moving these.
Nope.
And do you ever, I mean, you can see obviously compared to like a greenhouse grown plant, these have a little more of a lighter green from some intense sun.
Yep.
Do you ever find that you need to come out here and throw some shade cloth over it if you're going to have some extreme temps to prevent scorching, or?
No, what I do is I'll walk around and spray everything down, including myself. Usually when I'm doing that kind of thing, it's above 110.
I've actually seen you do that.
Yeah, so I'll walk around with the hose, just fresh water,
yeah,
and spray everything down. And as soon as I start feeling the heat, I'll just douse myself too, and feels like it's only 90.
So that's just you just like you're spraying off yourself, you just give them a little spray. That's it.
And that's it, because that's all they need to get them through that. It cools them down. It cools the top dressing down. I find that most of the burns, if they suffer anything, comes right at where the interface of the gravel and the plants are. And that's if they're too dry and that happens. That's why I liken it to having a canteen out in the desert. Now, if your canteen's full, you're pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's the canteen for succulents is the soil. Okay,
Gotcha.
if it's really hot, if their soil is moist, they'll take it. When you see them turning yellow, and it's been really hot, it's mostly likely that they're not getting enough water, and that they're showing stress because of they're not getting enough water coming up from the roots, or the roots are getting too hot because they're dry.
So obviously between, you know, all of the different cactus and succulents you grow, there are some that are winter growers and some that are dormant in the winter, vice versa.
Correct.
For like your cactus, what would you say are the temperatures that you look for as we start getting into fall where you're going to start restricting water some?
I generally start mid-November.
Okay.
Or early November.
Where you're going to start pulling back on water?
Yeah. Yeah. That's when I just cut
Now,
back.
if you live on the East Coast, that you're going to do that much earlier.
It's going to be earlier, yes.
And you'll have to, you know, it all depends on your location, where you are in the world.
When your average night temperature drops below a certain point, then that's your clue.
So for Southern California, for example, like what is a night temp where you're not going to want to soak cactus?
When you get below 40, into the 40s at night,
Okay.
I'll stop watering.
Clearly they're happy.
And you should see the ziploc bag of seed.
I know, I love that. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. Like, this is our jam right here.
Central over here.
Yeah.
Arid carpet here.
This is Acharogma rosiana.
Yep.
Yep. I have one from Miles. I love that plant. Really hard to find, but has it ever set seed for you, or?
Not that I noticed.
Yeah.
You know who has a bunch of it right now? Not a bunch.
Some?
GT.
You?
Yeah.
Oh, GT does? Well, there you go. I've got two now.
Look at that. That's how it happens, folks. The material gets passed on.
20 years later.
Yeah, I'm thinking about growing it outdoors because I have
The
Perez
rosiana?
de la Rosa.
Yeah.
I've grown here in the
Perez de la
greenhouse,
Rosa.
and it gets a certain size and it rots out every time in the greenhouse.
Interesting.
I've taken the pups off it. They've been outside for 3 years now. No rot so far, but they're taking longer to grow.
Yeah.
What is that?
Subducta.
Oh, that's a nice one.
But I mean, yeah.
Oof, look at this.
Yeah. I know. That's a slugger. Now, can we have a Cochinia appreciation moment here? Because
Hold on, I just want to take a moment for the lighting on these. Can we just give it a moment for spectacular lighting?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is so pretty. Look at
Be
these.
careful. That's all.
Oh yeah, that thing.
You're not gonna help me out, huh? If I get stuck,
No,
I'm on my own.
on your own.
There's a couple seed pods right here.
I'm good,
Oh
dude.
gosh, I'm stuck. There we go.
Can you imagine unpotting a seedling pot of those? Yeah, I'm good, dude.
I don't want to.
What is this?
No, that's Mammillaria melaleuca.
Melaleuca, yeah.
Melaleuca.
Melaleuca.
Pretty.
I don't know why they don't make melaleuca cacti or whatever at the end, but that's
I like that top dressing you got on there.
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Chiseled.
that's one of the ones I got from my landscaping.